John Kobylt Show. We're on every day from 1 until 4 o'clock. And you miss stuff every day? I don't know how that could be, but all right. We have the John Kobylt Show on demand, the podcast on the iHeartRadio app. How about that? And a little bit after 4 o'clock, that gets released, and you could pick up on what you missed. For example, in the first hour, we had Royal Oakes on, had a really interesting conversation with him about Nick Reiner in court today for the arraignment that didn't happen. They got a 3-week postponement. He showed up in a suicide vest and not wearing much else. And the attorney, Alan Jackson, asked for 3 weeks because Royal explains it really well, the different types of pleas that he could make, depending on whether it's insanity or it's some kind of compromised mind because of drugs that he took, some inability to make rational decisions. So it can get complicated, and you got to believe that there's a chance that Alan Jackson and Reiner are going to go down that road. We'll see. But if you want to learn how to look at it legally, you can't do better than Royal Oakes, and we had him on first hour of the show. So go listen on the podcast later if you missed it. All right, so this is really outrageous. Karen Bass is actively now running for re-election, and she's going on the podcast tour. And she showed up on something called The Fifth Column. And it is hosted in this case by a journalist named Matt Welch. And I'm not familiar with him, but apparently he's a writer and a journalist, has written books, a libertarian pundit, commentator. And so he's got this podcast, and he goes over to Getty House to do it at Karen Bass's library. That is the official mayor's residence that taxpayers pay for. And most of the mayors have lived there. And this was a 66-minute podcast. But you can only see 62 minutes on YouTube. And here's what happened. At the end of the podcast, I guess he probably said, "Thank you for coming on." The two get up and shake hands, and the room broke into applause. Why? I don't know. I have a feeling it wasn't a hard-hitting podcast, but hey, that's his show. Then the mayor kept talking, and the video kept rolling. And it seemed that after the official podcast was over, the mayor decided to be candid and speak truth, and said that in regards to the Palisades and Altadena fires, both sides botched it, meaning the city, her city, and L.A. County in the case of Altadena, because the county fire department and the county board of supervisors govern Altadena. She started talking about the Altadena fire and the lack of evacuation alerts, and she said they didn't tell people they were on fire. Now, she made remarks like this for 4 minutes, and I'll read you some of the others. And so it goes on YouTube, and on November 25th, and I guess nobody noticed, and I don't know for how long it sat up there, but eventually the Karen Bass's staff noticed, and they called Matt Welch and said, "We'll take it down. That wasn't supposed to be part of the podcast. That was like off the record." And he takes it down. You believe this? This is the first time she's said anything honest about anything related to the fires. First time. And she's on camera, she's on mic, and he agrees to take it down. And then when the LA Times called him about it, he didn't want to talk. He wouldn't say whether Bass asked for the end of the video to be cut off. When they said, "Well, why can't the final 4 minutes be found on YouTube anymore?" He had no comment on that. And then he says, we're not going to be talking about any of that right now. And then he hung up on the Times. This is a journalist. This is a journalist not wanting truth to come out. Why? Why does he want to protect Karen Bass? I don't know. I never heard of the guy. I don't know what he's about. But why would you protect her? The decision was to put it up, and for good reason. So he won't talk. So the Times calls Karen Bass's team and said, yeah, we asked for the last 4 minutes to be cut. In an email, the mayor's team told the LA Times the interview had clearly ended, and they acknowledged that when they took it down. Now, here's some other things that Bass said. No one goes after the Board of Supervisors, meaning the county. I'm responsible for everything. She feels like she got blamed for stuff that went wrong in Altadena. And she said, yeah, the city fire department in LA failed to deploy to the Palisades and failed to require firefighters to stay for an extra shift, which, of course, we knew back in January, but she'd never talk about it. Now, Bass was out of the country, going to Ghana, and it said here on a diplomatic mission. Yeah, she was at a party celebrating the Ghana president getting elected. That's not a diplomatic mission. Now, Bass talked with the Times about this podcast and said, well, it was a casual conversation after the podcast, and she called the situation unfortunate. But why do they take it down? She's admitting the fire department botched it. And guess who wasn't here to supervise the fire department? Karen Bass. She also went on another podcast hosted by Big Boy, who hosts on 92.3, Real 92.3, that one of our FM stations. I knew she was here one day in the building. And on that podcast, well, I'll tell you what she said on that podcast. And then I'll tell you why. I'll tell you, it was a big whopper of a lie. And it's a big whopper of a lie that she keeps pushing and pushing and pushing. And I'll read to you the proof that it was a big whopper of a lie. That's coming up next. We're on from 1 until 4 o'clock. The Moist line, 877-MOIST-86. 877-MOIST-86 for Friday. We'll play it twice. Or 877-664-7886 if you can only use numbers. Use the talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. That's another option. Moist line on Friday. I was telling you about Karen Bass. It was revealed today in the Times that she'd appeared on some podcast at the end of November where she admitted that LA Fire Department had botched the response to the Palisades fire. And, of course, you can't see that or hear that because she said it in a 4-minute conversation that the podcast video camera recorded and was included as part of the original post on YouTube. It's the Fifth Column podcast by an alleged journalist and writer named Matt Welch. And when Bass's staff complained that extra 4 minutes was on the YouTube video, Welch took it down and then got all uppity and belligerent about it when the Times was questioning him. He hung up on them because she admits that, and really the context here is because she went to Africa, she wasn't here to oversee the fire response and oversee Kristen Crowley, the LA fire chief, her fire chief, who was actively botching things up, not sending any pre-deployment crews to the area where the fire had been smoldering for a week. Yeah, remember that? because this was a rekindling of the Lockman fire. Bass ultimately was responsible for not holding meetings all week and saying, okay, we had a fire up there. Is it put out? Is it still smoldering? That's her job to do. Although you'll see in another quote, she doesn't really think that's her job. So she goes on this podcast, and as I'm looking through some other transcripts, Welch tells Bass that he viewed the Palisades fire as inevitable given the ferocious strength of the Santa Ana winds that day. As someone who grew up here, that fire was going to happen. Right, said Bass. That is total nonsense, total BS. Welch continued, if it's 100-mile-an-hour winds and it's dry, someone is going to sneeze and there's going to be a fire. It wasn't 100-mile-an-hour winds. That's false. It was the smoldering that was never put out of the original fire. It was the interference from state park representatives. So the fire department couldn't put out the smoldering. They couldn't build a fire break. They couldn't trample on the milk vetch plants. Some of these guys, you know, they've got credentials, they got resumes, but they're either ignorant or they're do public relations propaganda for politicians. I don't know what the story is with Welch. But Bass replied to his claim that there's going to be a fire no matter what. If you look at the response in Palisades and the county, neither side, and she paused and said, both sides botched it. Okay, so we got that on the record, that the LA Fire Department botched it, which is interesting because we've had 3 fire chiefs, Kristen Crowley, Ronnie Villanueva, and Jaime Moore, and they have been insisting all year that we did everything we could, including some other fire officials a little farther down the food chain. I could read you numerous quotes that these fire officials in public meetings, in media interviews, insisting we did everything we could. No, they didn't. And now Bass is admitting it. That's major news. And Matt Welch, who's under the delusion it was 100-mile-an-hour winds, under the delusion that fires are inevitable. No. I can tell you half a dozen ways this one should have been prevented, or it should have been stopped. It's just kind of shocking how sloppy and wrong people in the media are. Which gets me to a second, make sure I have time here. Because I wanted to get to this other thing she said on another podcast. Big Boy, who has a show on 92.3 on the FM here with iHeart in this building. And he has a podcast separate from the radio show, and Karen Bass was on it. And she said, had she known of the danger facing the region in early January, she wouldn't have gone anywhere. She wouldn't have gone to Long Beach, let alone Ghana. Well, for the record here, I was looking online for the warnings that the National Weather Service gave out back in early January. And you know what one of the first posts came up on Google? Was our own post here. Because we posted in mid-February just 4 of the many warnings that the National Weather Service put out. Warning of severe fire danger and severe wind warnings. We just have 4. A couple of them before she left the country. So we come back, I'm going to read you those, and then I'm going to give you a quote which should infuriate you when she was asked where blame should be assigned. All right, so that's next. It's the first time that's ever happened. It's like our show is the main resource looking for information. When you Google the National Weather Service warnings for the fire, there should have been 150 references to that, but That's okay. We got to do everybody's job here. We're on every day from 1 until 4 o'clock, and you can follow us at John Kobylt Radio, on all the social media platforms. All right. So the big news, LA Times this morning, Karen Bass did a podcast, and she lingered an extra 4 minutes after she thought it was over and started talking honestly for the first time in her life. There's nobody more dishonest than Karen Bass this side of Gavin Newsom. I mean, it's astounding, the lies that she tells. And she keeps repeating them over and over, hoping they become fact. Just the way officials kept repeating the nonsense about the fire being inevitable and it was blowing at 100 miles an hour. Neither is true, but you have Matt Welch, the host of the podcast, repeating that nonsense to Bass. And of course she's going to agree with it. She's the one who put out the propaganda. And mission accomplished. Now you got an alleged journalist slopping it back at her. Inevitable. Stop it. Good Lord. One of the things she said on another podcast that the Times went through on Big Boy's podcast is, had she known of the danger facing the region in early January, she wouldn't have gone to Long Beach, let alone Ghana. Well, she's claiming she didn't know. That's what she was claiming back in January and February, too, that she didn't know that there were bad wind warnings and bad fire warnings. I can't believe 11 months later, she's still selling this bag of crap. So I went online, and I needed to find a source that might have a link to the National Weather Service warnings for that first week in January, and it took me to our own show here. Because we had addressed this, I'll tell you when, February 19th. We posted at 3:42 in the afternoon. I guess Eric must have done this, right? Here are 4 examples of warnings from the National Weather Service. Warning for fire weather conditions from Tuesday, that there was going to be fire weather conditions from Tuesday the 7th to Friday the 10th, posted by the National Weather Service Los Angeles. Yet Mayor Karen Bass said she was unaware of the warnings. That's what we posted back in February, along with 4 examples of the warnings. One of them here, January 2nd, before she went to Ghana. National Weather Service. Potential for moderate to strong Santa Ana winds and extreme fire weather conditions. Next Tuesday, the 7th, through Thursday. In fact, they had a graphic, a photograph of wildfire on the horizon. And it said potential fire weather risk next Tuesday and to Thursday, January 7th through 9th. Chance of moderate to strong Santa Ana winds combined with dry air and vegetation. Impacts, extreme fire growth and behavior possible if a fire starts, and power outages. Use extra caution with potential fire sources. Again, January 2nd at 6:26 p.m. Karen Bass has about 100 staffers in the mayor's office. None of them saw this. She didn't see this. Nobody told her. She didn't hear about this. My memory was all the radio and television stations were on this. You know what it's like around here. They don't give you much news, but if there's like some kind of weather, big winds or rain, it's nonstop. It's almost comical. She's still selling that lie. All right, let me give you example number 2. This is from January 3rd. By the way, if my memory's correct, she didn't go to Ghana till the 5th. She didn't arrive in Ghana till the 5th. So January 2nd and 3rd, she was here. All right, January 3rd, National Weather Service posts, what causes wildfires? Combination of many components, including the dryness of fuels, vegetation, and weather. A fire weather watch is in effect for much of Ventura and LA counties for Tuesday to Friday next week. Take action now and be prepared. And they have another graphic here to show that fuel is usually dry vegetation like grass, brush, trees. Oxygen's almost everywhere. And if you have a spark plus the fuel and the oxygen, that equals fire. And then they have also a chart here on how to be prepared. Ready, set, go. Red flag warnings. She didn't see this? She wasn't ready, set, go, was she? All right, that's 2. Now, remember, we didn't have a deputy mayor in charge of police and fire because he had been accused of calling in a fake bomb threat to City Hall, Brian K. Williams. So there was no backup. You believe that? You believe the backup was actually sitting at home on paid leave because he was a lunatic who called it a bomb threat? Who calls it a bomb threat unless they're insane? All right, here's the third example of the warning. And this one is, let me see. What is this from? It says, a fire weather watch is in effect Tuesday through Friday for portions of LA and Ventura counties. There is the potential for damaging north to northeast winds. With no significant rainfall effect, the fire season will continue into the new year. This is posted January 3rd as well. So that's 1 from January 2nd, 2 from January 3rd. That's 3 of them. And there were more, but that's 3 of them we posted. Bass is still in the country. Again, 100 people work for her. And she goes on these podcasts still and says she didn't know. It's just never challenged. All right, now this one. Let me click on it. This one is, now this is January 6th. Heads up, life-threatening, destructive, widespread windstorm is expected Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning across much of Ventura, LA County. Areas not typically windy will be impacted. See graphic for areas of greatest concern. Stay indoors, away from windows. Expect power outages. This is January 6th at 11 a.m. in the morning, 24 hours before the fire started. Kristen Crowley doesn't send any pre-deployment to the spot where the fire had burned 6 days beforehand and was still smoldering and ready to burn again. If Karen Bass would ever come on our show or our podcast, I would read her all these. That's what I would do. And say, do you think it's credible you didn't know? You and 100 employees? And I could probably find another dozen warnings that they put out that week. I mean, it's incredible how she continues to compound the wound, to inflame the suffering by insisting she didn't know, as if that's a defense. That's not a defense. That should be another round of indictments. And then lies about it. And she never pays for any of this. She never pays for being too lazy or too stupid to hold meetings that week when there were fire warnings that I'm sure, I mean, there are some radio stations that do weather every 10 minutes. These are all just from Twitter. Nobody in the LA office has the National Weather Service Twitter feed when you've got these kind of warnings. I can't believe I'm still talking about this 11 months later because she's still going around lying about it. And if she really didn't know, then that should have been grounds for resignation immediately. I mean, she should have been recalled, fired, impeached, something. And now she's running for re-election. And everyone's acting like that's normal. Remember that dopey reporter we played from Channel 5 a few days ago? Well, you know, the fire's been a challenge.